I'm going to start recording, that way it's going. Okay. You guys ready?
Whenever you're ready, buddy.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hit that music.
Get my thing going. Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, your host, the man, the myth, and the legend, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Sparks.
All right, way to land it, David. David is in today for Brian, who is on assignment. But David, way to open us up. Appreciate that, buddy.
You are very welcome, sir.
All right, so David has a little experience in the startup ecosystem. But first off, I want to welcome you, David, and my guests, who you'll meet in a minute. And I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. We're kicking off 2025, and we've got some amazing guests coming up. We got some new programs. We got some new events. We've got a whole ecosystem leaning in on Silicon Valley Impact. But again, David, I want to thank you for stepping in for Brian for today.
You are so very welcome. And Brian, real quick, can you tell me a little bit about Venture House? I've been kind of hearing a little bit about that.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you heard about that. And of course, I want to hear a little bit about, what your experience is in this startup world. But
absolutely,
we just struck a partnership with Gardenia, which is right down the street. And for those of you who are in the South Bay, you may know it previously as the Palms, the restaurant, really nice Victorian house. We're turning it into the Venture House. And on January 28th, we're going to have our kickoff series event there. And we're expecting 250 people to show up to meet investors and get to know the ecosystem. But from that, it's going to parlay into more networking events, dinners, panels, pitches, presentations. So now that I got Bill Reicher on the spot, I'm going to look at him and say, Bill, you're always welcome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So David, again, thanks again for stepping in today. Brian will be back next week, but you do have a little experience in the startup world. You were telling me before the show. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, a little bit. My great uncle was the actual founder of AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. So my dad got into tech and has been involved in that for quite some time. He's mainly involved with Genentech in South San Francisco. So me being a young techie, I've just followed the trends. Obviously AI is really big right now, big video game person, but no, just tech in general. I've just kind of been started my whole life. So happy to be here and listen to what you guys have to say.
All right. Well, thanks for driving the ship today, buddy. Now that the adults have left the building, we see what we can do without Brian being here.
All hands on deck.
All right. So without further ado, I want to welcome in my guest today. We have a legend in the house, Bill Reicher. And we also have Payom.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, I know. Did you see me? I had to think about that one. All right. So we're gonna again continue the process of talking about startup. But Bill, thanks for being here today. And if anyone in Silicon Valley doesn't know who you are, you got to give a short intro. But thanks for being here.
Brian, I really appreciate it. Thank you for getting me on finally after we've been back and forth on this for a while. So I came out here a long time ago for graduate school at Stanford, and I wound up starting a software company while I was a graduate student. This is before it was fashionable, right, for grad students to start software companies. And that was a rocket ship right off the bat. And I thought, boy, this entrepreneur venture thing, that's pretty it's pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
And then one day it crashed and burned, blew up. And you know how sometimes they say here in Silicon Valley, we embrace failure?
Yeah.
I was not embraced.
It didn't sit well with you.
But in any case, I had the opportunity. The great thing about Silicon Valley is, you crash and burn, you get a chance to pick yourself up and you dust yourself off, and then you spin the story a little bit. And then you get to do it again. So I got to do it again. And that company we took public. And so
nice.
I was on I was on the roller coaster, rocking and rolling, and then did 4 startups, wound up getting together with Guy Kawasaki after my 4th company went public. Got together with Guy Kawasaki and we started Garage Technology Ventures. And we wanted to be a different kind of venture capital firm. We were going to transform venture capital here in Silicon Valley. One of our taglines was, we take the FU out of funding.
We'll unpack that in a little while.
In any case, so I consider myself an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist. And fast forward, we merged Garage with Pegasus Tech Ventures, which is a big global venture capital firm, headquarters here, offices around the world, over $2 billion in assets under management. And we get to do things with Pegasus that pretty much no other venture capital firm gets to do. So I continue my entrepreneurial instincts in terms of we launched this thing called Startup World Cup, where we launched an accelerator with Harvard. I'm launching my book. So all sorts of things I get to do with Pegasus.
And we'll talk a little bit about the book, Getting to Wow, in a little bit. But once again, Bill Reicher with Pegasus Ventures. I'm honored that you're here today. And we got a lot of ground to cover. But before we get into that, Payom, you were ready like within 12 hours to be on the show. And I want to thank you for coming on. Give us a little intro about what you got going on and a little bit about your background.
Sure. I mean, I don't know where to start. I feel like my life's coming full circle here. Bill, you're actually the first person I ever pitched.
Oh, jeez.
It's a small world, right?
You probably don't remember this.
Okay.
San Mateo College. Roger Royce was on the panel.
Oh, okay.
This was 2017.
Okay.
And that crashed and burned. But it was great advice that you gave. So I'm happy that I'm here. I feel like everything's come full circle now.
Oh, very cool.
A lot of lessons learned. A lot of the things you said there now resonate in my life today. A little bit about myself. I'm a member of a group called the Submitter International. It's a group out of San Jose. It's an Abrahamic faith. I've been a founder for around 8 years. And I started this company called Unibui, which helps connect local college students to local careers to start their careers. So think about startups that are looking for interns or unpaid interns. We have a lot of accelerators joining us today. We have a lot of startups, small businesses, coffee shops, and we really want to help students find their first job. We want to help them find that first career move that'll help them start their career so they're not sitting on Indeed, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, and just scrolling and applying and getting denied because ATS trackers are denying them. So that is a little bit about my story. I've started 3 startups before that, and I was actually in real estate for 7 years. So I've kind of been in everything. Now I'm in AI. I'm one of the founding GTM members of a company called Encord, which is a computer vision company out of San Francisco as well, Series B. So I've been around, and I'm happy my startup is moving on its own direction. I'm happy to be helping other founders too in their startup journey as well.
That's what I love. So in the house today, we've got, if just having a job isn't enough, you might as well have the startup, the background, and Bill Reicher, who's got, the venture fund. He's got Pegasus, the history. So we've got Silicon Valley in the studio today, and you brought your wife.
It gives me the support to have someone much more beautiful than I am in the room,
Well, good. Well, thank you for joining us. Bushra, you're in the background, but always love having people stop by the studio. But Bill, let's jump into it. I got to ask this question because no matter where I go and you find somebody who is enthusiastic about the startup ecosystem, who is connected and all this energy, what do you love about the startup ecosystem and all this experience that you talked about leading into the show? What stands out to you?
In terms of the startup ecosystem, what I love about my job is that every day I get a chance to learn new things and experience the enthusiasm and passion of entrepreneurs. And so it's an unbelievably energizing for me. And now I happen to be sort of genetically deformed in the sense that no, I am pathologically curious, which can sometimes drive people nuts. But I just love poking and prodding and learning about new things and testing ideas and checking in with entrepreneurs. Do they really believe this, or is this, just aspirational? So I get to exercise, my favorite brain muscles every day with Pegasus Tech Ventures.
Now, you mentioned right now something I find very interesting is that there's a difference in entrepreneurship or the founder, that they're either one, they have found an opportunity and are exploring it, or they're the one that you just mentioned, they're passionate about it, and they're looking to raise this from the ground up. Tell us a little bit about that passion, because I think it's you and I, that's where you and I have crossroads. It's like, there's got to be energy in this. How important is that?
I came to Silicon Valley and I wound up, sort of stumbling into entrepreneurship. That wasn't my plan when I came to Silicon Valley. But then this opportunity presented itself, and to me, everything I've done has seemed obvious as the next thing to do. And people talk about Silicon Valley like, oh, the risk takers and, the brave and the bold and all that stuff. And for me, it's always been, well, I mean, it's obvious. This is the right next thing to do. And so it's not, about trying to somehow spin up some passion or enthusiasm. For me, when I meet an entrepreneur who is convinced that this is the right next thing to do, and is not going to let anything get in his or her way in getting it done. And I can tell a few stories of some of my favorite entrepreneurs, and the difference between the entrepreneur who is convinced and the entrepreneur who is opportunistic. And so there's an important distinction.
Do you think, so that's where your natural curiosity comes from, and you start to kind of bear down on those, maybe those holes or gaps in conviction? Because I don't think there are gaps in convictions, even in the unknown. Like if you were to ask somebody who has a conviction, what are you going to do? And they don't know, they're going to go, I'm going to figure it out. They don't just BS you.
Exactly, right. And that's part of the difference. You can tell the difference between a entrepreneur who's convinced versus the entrepreneur who is opportunistic. When you ask the question, the opportunistic entrepreneur is going to make something up.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, because they think that somehow, they're going to get penalized if they don't have the right answer. The one who's convinced will say, that's a really interesting question. We probably should dig into that. And you don't get penalized. In fact, that elevates you in my sort of esteem if you admit to the fact that you can't know everything, but your point, you take the attitude of, we're going to figure that out.
Yeah. Is that where the wow begins? Getting to know your book, is the wow in the person before it's in the product or service that they're bringing to the market?
Well, they're almost inextricable, right? I mean, so the wow is the way the person communicates that they have a clear vision of exactly what they want to accomplish, and that they've got a compelling value proposition that is, 10x better, that, nobody possibly could not want this, value proposition, and they are credible. They're not bullshitting you. They are not making stuff up. They've got evidence. They've got proof. They've got some indication there that what they're saying is true. And so it's, sort of a characteristic of human beings. You can tell if someone is clear, are they compelling, and are they credible? And that's the core of getting to wow. Clear, compelling, and credible.
I love it. And so you made a distinction earlier about the next logical thing. Is it somebody who has fallen in love with their own idea, or is this like, no, this is the next iteration, and I'm excited. I have a conviction this is the next place to go.
Yeah. No, there are plenty of entrepreneurs, and I was one of them, who was convinced that this is the next obvious thing. So in the year 1991, I got together with a group of people around this unbelievably eye-watering technology, which was, okay, imagine this. So it's a computer, but it just looks like a piece of glass. And you interact with this computer just by touching the glass.
Who would have ever thought?
So this is 1991, okay? This is 1991. Wow. And it was like obvious that this is the future, right?
Yeah.
And so in any case, the story. And it was 2011 when Apple introduced the iPad. 20 years later. Wow. 20 years later. So that's one of the challenges, both as an entrepreneur and as an investor, is this issue of timing. So, there are a bunch of things that seem obvious. It seems obvious that computers should be able to program themselves, right? This seemed obvious for at least 20 years. It seems obvious that computers should be good at translation. That's been obvious for, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And so there have been lots and lots of entrepreneurs who have broken their picks on what was seeming obvious, but it was not ready yet. It was not time yet.
So I'm going to come back to that timing of things, because clearly you've heard with Startup World Cup countless pitches, and you've probably heard great ideas. You were like, wow, this is reminding me of 1991. Timing's not right. But let's back up before we get to that. And both of you need to remind me to come back to this, because my superpower is a short memory. Let's talk a little bit about getting to wow, because that's really where it all begins, and the fundability of a company. I mean, you've got a thick book there, probably over my educational level, but no, I'm just joking. Tell us a little bit about getting to wow. What was the inspiration behind the book, and some high level takeaways?
Yeah. So the inspiration goes back right now 20 plus years. So when we launched Garage, one of the things we wanted to do, Guy and I wanted to do, was we wanted to be the most accessible venture firm on the planet. Part of what we did was we were the first venture firm to allow entrepreneurs to connect with us over the internet.
Well, I want to pause on something really quick, because this is not lost on me.
Okay.
You from the gate said this mindset thing, we want to be the best in the world. How important is to have that mindset in any venture?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important, and it goes to compelling value proposition. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't just be a little bit better. You can't just be a tweak. You can't just be incremental. You've got to be, a quantum leap. Not exactly correct in physics terms, but okay, we'll go. Yeah. But so yeah, I mean, obviously, you've got to have that compulsion and commitment to being better. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be
with
better
the conviction,
forever.
Right? With the conviction, that kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah. And so, it doesn't mean you have to be better for everyone out there. You have to be the best for your target customers, right? And so that gets to this challenge of, do you really understand who your target customers are? Because you cannot serve everyone, equally well. So, a compelling value proposition in, prop tech or fintech or, clean tech is not applicable in every situation, right? So you've got to make sure that you understand, who your target audience is, and that for that target audience, you are going to be goddamn best on the planet in terms of addressing their needs, taking advantage of their opportunities, solving their problems. So best is critical.
Best is critical. So I may have derailed you with that question. So I just want to make sure for our audience that so getting to wow, this compelling, first of all, the conviction, the passion. Right. You now have a target audience. Is that within the wow, or did we go off?
No. That's absolutely core. That's absolutely core. But to get back to the origin story,
right?
If I may. Okay. So when we launched Garage, we wanted to be accessible, outbound, available, right? And so what we started doing is we were the first venture capital firm to run conferences. So we ran a conference. Originally it was called Boot Camp for Startups. And then 9/11 happened, and we changed the name to The Art of the Start, right? And so then Guy took all the stuff we learned from The Art of the Start, wrote a book, and published that, and made it part of the entrepreneurship curriculum. And so we were doing a lot of outbound coaching, teaching, workshops for entrepreneurs. And so one of the workshops that I was running was this workshop around helping entrepreneurs do better at pitching. And what I was listening to in terms of the pitch coaching at the time, and unfortunately to this day, the pitch coaching is doing more damage than good for most entrepreneurs, because most pitch coaches are not pitch coaches, they're presentation coaches. And a pitch is not a presentation. A pitch is not a presentation, right? A pitch is a back and forth. It's a tennis match. It's short bites. It's bam, bam, bam. Presentation, TED Talk, you've got 16 minutes. You have a narrative arc. You start with the sort of evil sort of in the world, and you conquer the evil, and Odysseus comes back home and embraces his wife or whatever.
Right?
And that's not a pitch. And too many, and so that was what we were realizing back then, that the pitches that we were listening to were generally horrible. And so I get a call from a friend of mine who says, "Hey, Bill, I know you love to judge pitch competitions. How'd you like to be another judge for a pitch competition?" And I just inadvertently just groaned over the phone, right? And she said, "Bill, I thought you loved working with entrepreneurs." And I said, "Yeah, but there's something wrong. We're trying to teach these entrepreneurs how to pitch, and it just doesn't seem to be getting through." And so she said, "Okay, why don't you fix it?" Right? And so that was sort of the origin of this. So I created this workshop called Getting to Wow. And then Angelica, my co-author, said, "Hey, Bill, can I take your workshop and turn it into a book?" And I said, "Sure, go ahead."
And there it is.
Well, almost. So a year later, she comes back with 240 slides and says, "Would you help me edit it?" And so I took the next 2 years and sort of started from ground one with her, egging me on and coaching me and editing me, and learned the secret to actually writing a book is to have a co-author. You need someone who is going to, sort of jab you in the side with a knife from time to time to keep you going. But thank God Angelica was there. And that was how that happened. But the core of Getting to Wow is to try to adjust some of the mistakes that pitch coaches are training entrepreneurs in, and try to get entrepreneurs to understand they need to get to the focus of clear, compelling, and credible in the first 20 seconds, or they're going to lose their audience.
So how do you, real quick, and then we're going to pivot to Payom real quick, because Payom, you need to really stop dominating this conversation right now.
Listen, I have some questions for Bill too after this conversation. Go ahead.
Okay.
So give us kind of a high level, what does those 3 C's look like in 20 seconds?
Yeah. So again, you need to be clear what you are doing. So, Pegasus Tech Ventures is a global venture capital firm.
The best.
For any audience, that's clear. Okay. But now, why are we compelling? So, as a venture capital firm, we are unique in our ability to bring a network of over 40 multinational corporations to the table with every investment we make, to enable entrepreneurs to accelerate their growth with collaboration as well as capital. And so then the next question is, what makes you credible? Well, we are managing over $2 billion of capital under management, and we have over 40 separate venture funds for our multinational corporations.
Now, that's great for a company that's had traction for so many years. Okay. What would it look like, just to kind of play with it at the end, if someone is got limited traction?
Yeah. So the credibility point, right? I mean, so you can be clear and compelling, but even before you have traction. But, and so I push, I don't know if I gave you this advice or not, but for pre-revenue companies, VCs always have signals of traction. There are always signals, even if you don't have revenues yet. There are a whole bunch of reasons why we can either believe you or not believe you. So as a pre-revenue company, what have you done to validate, your market opportunity? Well, we've already engaged with over, 50 of our target customers. We have letters of intent. We've got initial proof of concept. We've got collaboration agreements. You can do this without, even in pre-revenue. Or, we have a technical advisory board that includes this Nobel laureate and this, professor from Columbia, right? So there are a whole bunch of signals that suggests that it's not you just making it up, that gives us evidence that you are indeed credible.
I love that. And for those of you listening to the show, is there a rerun in podcast or radio? No. Anyway, go back and listen to this.
10 seconds back.
Yeah, 10 seconds back.
A little replay.
Yeah, go back and make a list of that, because the signals are there. If you have traction, they're there.
Yeah.
So
Can I? The counterexample is the entrepreneur. Far too many entrepreneurs who say, "Well, Bill, if you give me some money, I can hire some sales guys, and I can go engage with my market." And I'm going, baloney. I mean, why aren't you out there? How is it you have not been able to attract other passionate people to make this progress before you raise money?
All right, that's a perfect segue. So, Payom, you talked a little bit about having experience in go-to-market. You've got multiple startups going. What part of this resonates with you in terms of importance of traction with what you're working on? And you can step in anywhere of this, because Bill's given us a lot, but what's resonated with you in terms of this traction?
I mean, all of it, actually. I mean, everything Bill's saying is completely accurate. And in fact, the first advice Bill gave me, he pushed back in one of the points that we were making. We were originally making a marketplace for students to buy and sell with one another on campuses. And Bill said, "What's the difference between you and Facebook Marketplace?" And I stopped for that moment, and I was just like, I didn't have an answer. It was my first time pitching. I was just flustered in that moment. I was just like, and that's where I started making up like a reason.
Like you had to have the right answer.
I had to have the right answer. And this is where you grow. And you grow as an entrepreneur. You think that hearing great advisors and things like that you're going to listen to them. The reality is many entrepreneurs don't, and they have to go through it painfully. For those who stick around and actually go through the process, they go through it painfully, and then they realize that what they had originally heard, they should have listened to. So in the scenario for us, like our go-to-market strategies are very simple. You don't need funding to make sales. You don't need a product to make sales. You just need to talk to people to make sales. And most startups don't talk to people before they start building. And my advice would be talk to everyone. Talk to your friends, talk to your family. If you don't have anyone in your market that you know, talk to someone who may know that person. Just introduce you. So many people, especially in the Silicon Valley, are helpful. They're helpful people. They're just willing to talk and give you advice to help you go in the direction that may be useful in the future for them, or somebody who they can help and advise. So what I learned was, like Bill was saying, it is baloney if you're going out to people and telling them that, oh, I need money or funding in order to sell you don't, okay? You can do commission-based sales to individuals, okay? So many people are willing to work for you if you are a leader that is inspiring enough for them to work for. And it's about building a culture that actually every win feels like their win. Every opportunity, and this is internally in the startup, has nothing to do with external factors. It's about who you are as a founder. And it's how you're building out your team in a way so that they're there not because of money, but that money is that extra bit that comes in later, and everyone's happy when that comes in, you know? But the wins are collectively shared. And I feel like that is what I've learned over the years, is that building a startup is not easy. Being a founder who inspires is not easy, but you have to be a founder who looks at all your employees and says, you are an owner of what we're building here. And then you don't need funding in that moment. You can build enough traction, and then you go to Bill Reicher later for the check.
So does that resonate with you, Bill, in terms of, and we're going to go to a break in a few minutes, and then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about timing. But does this hustle, does this perspective weigh in on having a second conversation with those pitches that you hear when the founder has this mentality of like, I'm going to find a way, I'm going to get that traction? Is that a big indicator of who you talk to next?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I love it, and thank you so much for all of that, Payom. we love to see entrepreneurs that are scrappy and are urgent about, getting things done. Now, I got to interject in here that, yes, we love that, but the venture world has changed so dramatically in the last 6, 7, 8 years that, most entrepreneurs listening to this story are going to say, wait a second, I mean, that guy went out and raised, 100 million on their seed. And those guys went out, they raised $1 billion on their first round. And, the venture world has changed so much that the news stories are about these not so scrappy, but, sort of well-connected entrepreneurs who manage to convince these mega funds, investors, to write these huge checks. Doesn't feel very scrappy to me, right? Unfortunately, that is by far the minority of funded deals. It very much distorts the way the valley looks. It distorts the way the statistics get presented. And we still need scrappy entrepreneurs who are capable of building, enthusiastic teams and committed to making a dent in the universe, even if they don't raise $100 million in their Series A.
That's the norm and expectation of the masses, I think, in perspective, of the masses who get funded, right? But are you saying the change in the last 6 to 7 years is these mega checks that are being written in the early stage? Is that what it is?
Yeah. There are a whole bunch of things that have gone on, and one of which is just a massive influx of capital into venture capital. So venture capital traditionally, and even still, is a tiny asset class, right? And so a little bit of, in the teens, in 14, 15, 16, when interest rates were zero and people were looking for return, you saw this massive inflow of capital into venture capital. And then all of a sudden, you started seeing these massive funding rounds. And then the creation, of all of these unicorns, et cetera, which at some level is both encouraging and discouraging to most entrepreneurs, right? Because most entrepreneurs discover, I'm not going to get, a multi-million-dollar check. I'm going to have to scrape by with a few $100,000 from some angels, and they feel kind of left out of the current ecosystem. But please, just persist. Don't worry about the headlines. Don't worry about all that other crap. Focus on, delivering on your compelling value proposition.
Persist. Okay. And with that being said, David, you ready to take us to a little quick break?
Let's do it.
There's no pomp and circumstance or anything. It's just like hitting that button, that pause button. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about timing. We'll talk about Startup World Cup, and we'll talk a little bit more about Payom's journey. All right, so we're back. We're here with Bill Reicher and Payom, tell me how to pronounce your last name, just for our audience, not for me.
It's Niazmandi. It's actually exactly how it's written. It's Niazmandi.
Okay, and how can people, just to kind of go with that flow, I want to make sure, because I'll forget in the end, how can people best connect with you?
People can find me on LinkedIn. If you can spell my name, you can find me on LinkedIn.
It'll be in the show notes.
But you can also search Unibui, Unibui, and you will find me almost immediately, because every article is about probably me and the company. So,
all right. And you were talking during the break. We were talking a little bit about, and I'm probably going completely off script. Oh, we're going to do this and do that. And now we're going another direction.
Sure.
I had asked both of you what would be a good takeaway, and you mentioned that you're really here to support startups as well as students coming out of college. What are some other kind of engagements that you do with your market? What would be a good message for those who are listening right now about what you're doing?
Yeah, in terms of engagement for the market, I feel like students, not only students who are graduating, students who are in college today, you can start learning what a startup's like by just joining a startup. Okay. And it's great experience. Like, you will have the best time working at good startups. And it'll give you the most experience you'll ever have, because you'll have responsibilities that are probably not going to be given at a large Fortune 500 company, but a Fortune 500 company will still teach you other things too. So wherever you can go, get that experience. It's good for you in the future. And yeah, my app is designed for those individuals to find those opportunities around them. Down the street from them, maybe 3 or 4 startups. In their college, maybe a few startups they can join too. And I just want them to know that resource is available.
So is that what you were saying earlier about you partner with accelerators because they could utilize you as a resource to bring in this young, innovative talent? Because I really think the crossroads of innovation, where you have these fresh minds and the wisdoms of those who have been in it for a while, that crossroad is really where you get fresh ideas.
Exactly. And it's not only the fresh ideas, it's the top talent. Because the top talent may lie in a community college, but we don't often look at community college students. It may lie in a state school student. We don't often look at them. We always look at the Stanfords, the Harvards, the Princetons, and we're like, wow, we need to get some of these guys onto our team. But the individuals who may make the most impact may come from a community college. Steve Jobs went to a community college. A lot of these top entrepreneurs went to community colleges. And so that's why we're kind of advocate across the board. And we say that the best employee you've ever had may be right down the street.
Yeah, don't sleep on what you perceive as the irrelevant, because the irrelevant could be your starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Shout out to Brock Purdy.
like to this point, one of the best like team members I have is a high school graduate from Montana. He never went to college. But how would that individual ever find a startup to work for? He's applied to thousands of startups, okay?
Okay.
And this is the problem, right? Is that they're almost sifted away. They're washed away because they didn't make the right resume. And so we want those opportunities to be brought forward to the right individuals. And so, yeah, that's the kind of world I want to kind of build.
I loved it. And the name of your company and the website where people can connect with you, give it to us one more time.
It's called Unibui, Unibui.
I love it. I love it. All right. So again, we were talking in the break, like what would be a good message for our audience. And Bill, you were talking about Startup World Cup. And what I heard you say earlier when you were in your early years is you began with the event. You began with the conference. Why is it so important to consistently engage with the market, to create this ecosystem? And give me your insight into that approach, and then parlay that into the Startup World Cup.
Okay. Yeah, well, again, that's kind of a softball question. Why are you out there talking to the market, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, right. And so when we started Garage, when we started doing events for entrepreneurs, the big idea was for us to get the Garage brand out there, known in the startup ecosystem, quickly, and then conversely, to give us access to the best entrepreneurs wherever they were in the world. And then the secret part of it that nobody talks about is that it was a great mechanism for us to connect with all of the other top tier VCs. And so fast forward, when we launched Startup World Cup in 2016, similar idea. The idea was, let's actually create an event that is global. And so we started with 15 cities around the world. And the big idea was in each startup ecosystem around the world to find a partner, like an accelerator or like some other program for entrepreneurs that was trying to support entrepreneurs in their local ecosystem, and go to them and say, hey, Up 21 in Prague, right? How would you like to plug into Silicon Valley? Let's work together to create a European Startup World Cup that gives you the opportunity to plug into all of Europe and gives us the opportunity to connect with you to run this competition in Europe. And they were just delighted and enthusiastic, and they got together with some partners and put together a $500,000 prize for this event. Boom. I mean, the energy around this, it was extraordinary when we tapped into it. And so now fast forward 8 years. Last year we did 100 competitions around the world.
Wow.
100 competitions around the world, which now makes Startup World Cup the largest startup competition on the planet. You can Google it.
I love it. And so I have a question. I haven't had to find a right place to ask it. But when you began in the beginning, did you start the events and the conferences and the workshops before your first fund? Or did you have the fund first and then begin the events?
It was part of the pitch for our first fund.
That you had these conferences
that
going.
we would do, right. Where, our presumption was that VCs were, in our experience, VCs were terrible at marketing. And at the same time, so now this is 1999 when we started, right? And, so the internet was booming. And VCs were not taking advantage of the internet for their own business, right? They were investing in internet companies, but they weren't using the internet. And we said, well, that's ludicrous. Our thesis was that the next big thing was not actually the internet. Our thesis was the next big thing was global entrepreneurship. And so to reach entrepreneurs around the world, we had to use the internet. To reach them around the world, we had to be outbound. We couldn't just sit here in Silicon Valley and say, wait for, brilliant entrepreneurs from around the world to show up and knock on our door. That's ludicrous.
Gold. That is so gold, but overlooked.
It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost considered, how law firms used to not be able to advertise, right? So VC firms sort of had the attitude of, we don't have to promote ourselves.
They'll come to me.
They'll come to me, right?
Yeah.
And we just thought that was, silly in terms of both giving enough entrepreneurs the opportunity and, sort of getting access to the breadth and depth of innovation around the world.
Yeah. I love it.
I highly recommend for any startup out there to, even if they just apply to the Startup World Cup, to go to the Startup World Cup and watch other people pitch as well. Because I was a part of the 2016 Startup World Cup, which was the first one you guys ran. And I actually met Steve Wozniak in San Francisco. So you just meet like legends of the Valley, and they could be in the crowd. And so it is a great place to network. And as founders, you should be networking all the time, and you should be growing that network all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a theme. There's this importance of building and going to community. I mean, they have a friends and family round. Why not have a community round or friends and family? But that sounds, if I can stay away from being too cheesy, that's essentially what you did is you built this outbound community and trust and relationship that has really propelled Pegasus Venture to the heights that it's at now.
Yeah. Well, our other big insight in terms of the evolution of venture capital, right? So in the olden days, there were a relatively small number, hundreds of VCs in the United States. And you could find them, you knew who they were, you can know where they went. And then, what happened in the teens was there was just this explosion of VCs, an explosion of funds. And those funds all raised money because there was so much money chasing venture. If they had any sort of credibility, they could raise a $100 million fund. But they didn't understand that the world had changed. And all of a sudden, it was highly competitive. And you couldn't just sit back and blog and expect you're going to get the best companies to show up at your door, to apply to you. You have to be now in the venture capital world. To be a player in the venture capital world, you have to be aggressively outbound. And so, what we decided at Pegasus is we are going to be the most outbound-oriented venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. And that's a big part of what Startup World Cup is.
That's a mic drop moment right there to be able to, again, initiate the relationships and not on any level, whether you are raising as a startup or you're looking for the LP to pour into your fund, you need to be engaging. You can't sit back and say, oh, I've created this fund, and because I create it, they'll come, right? It's going to leave you with no fun and just a title,
right?
Essentially.
Yeah.
I love it. So before we go too far down that rabbit hole, because I almost stood up when you started saying all that, Bill, that I could geek out on that. I want to go back to the importance of timing, and whether, again, you're looking to raise a fund or become fundable as a startup. Let's revisit that. Why is timing so important, and almost like this add-on to the 3 C's?
Yeah, it's tough, because sort of one of the core principles of being an innovator is that you need to, as my partner Guy Kawasaki says, you need to jump to the next wave, right? You can't compete sort of on the current wave of things that are going, because once you're in the current wave, AI agents, right? I mean, does the world need another AI agent? I'm sure there are lots of entrepreneurs out there that think the world needs another AI agent. You got to jump to the next wave and figure out what is that next wave where you can take a leadership position. But jumping to the next wave throws you into the risk of being too early, right? And so, you can be too late, and most entrepreneurs are too late, but you can also be too early. And so how do you figure out what's the next wave, and whether or not, I'm too early for that next wave? You talk to customers, right? You go out, you talk to customers, and this is the story of, my iPad. So we took this prototype around the country. I took it to, architects and engineers and stock traders and real estate brokers and delivery companies and, lawyers. And I showed them this iPad, and they drooled. Everybody said, wow, that's incredible. And then they said, how much does it cost? I said, well, $49.95. You mean $4,995? Okay, we'll buy one.
Yeah.
So, back then the technology was so expensive that it was too early. And we discovered that along the way. We tried to pivot. We didn't have enough time to pivot. Didn't work out for another 20 years. But we went out there and we learned we were too early. Again, unfortunately, we weren't able to pivot fast enough to then take advantage of that learning. But that's what you got to do as an entrepreneur.
I love to learn more about that learning of that.
And I want to kind of touch base on this too, actually. It's not only about the technology being too early. It's sometimes about the founder being too early. And I don't think we talk about this enough, because sometimes the founders are not at the stage where, maybe mentally at the stage where they should be, network-wise not on the stage that they should be. They may take a deal that's really bad early on. So it's also about education when it comes to this too. You're right. Like, it's about that leap forward and that getting that leap forward ahead of the market. But it's also about showing the market what that leap forward looks like. And many times the founder who's too early tries to force the market to understand what they're doing, and they cannot be that leap. But the founder who educates the market of something new becomes that leap. So that's what I've learned as well, just watching founders and entrepreneurs pitch all the time. The ones that were most successful were the ones who could teach and pitch at the same time, so that their vision became light to the people who were watching.
So I want to throw this at both of you, and Bill, this is kind of a play on the timing thing. What I'm hearing is, and Payom, you're saying the same thing. There's timing and allowing the market to evolve, but then there's that individual who does the category design. They design the category. So, for example, when rideshare came up, when Airbnb popped up, I mean, they were doing it long before, but there's these new categories. And if you don't have the founder who can educate the market or lead that, does it become a timing issue, or does it become a leadership issue? Bill, how does that
Well, again, I mean, I agree with Payom saying that that the founder has got to, be both urgent and persistent, but also listen, right? I mean, and so a great example. There are a bunch of examples of this. Take Netflix, right? So when Reed and the gang started Netflix, the name tells you exactly what they were planning on doing, right? Internet movies. But what they discovered pretty quickly was, oops, we cannot deliver movies over the internet. And so they pivoted. They found a beachhead that enabled them to get there. So they were able to connect the dots from mailing, DVDs to delivering movies over the internet. They were able to connect those dots and convince their investors that this was a legitimate beachhead to start. So if you're a good entrepreneur and you go out in the market and you think, oh crap, it's a little too early, and I don't have the resources to educate the market, I've got to figure out a way to start where the world is now and work my way to where the world is going to be, then that would be a way to manage the risk of missing the timing.
Yeah. Is that kind of resonate what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's not always about the initial product that you want to build is going to be the thing that people grab onto. You reminded me what Netflix did. I just remembered that they used to send in DVDs. You'd have to put your address in and they would send you your DVD that you wanted. And that transitioned into them, with technology improving, with databases improving, the ability to put all these movies online. And that, yes, completely agree with what he said.
But I realize now there's a whole generation of entrepreneurs who have no idea what a DVD is.
Right. We age ourselves at that point. Yeah. So Bill, talk a little bit about, if this is not pivoting too much here, you're still, you're doing the Startup World Cup. And by the way, before you get too far beyond that, I'm going to ask you about you taking the stage and how many times that you're speaking about what you love, what you're doing. When does the Startup World Cup begin again? And how can people get involved?
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And yes, we've launched our 2025 series couple of months ago. We're doing one this Thursday at CES. We're doing a Las Vegas CES Startup World Cup. So the applications are closed, but no. So we've already launched 2025. The grand finale for 2025 will be in mid-October. So we're going to run close to 100 regional competitions between, the last, December 1st and October. So if you go to startupworldcup.io, or if you go to PegasusTech.Ventures.com, you can get to Startup World Cup, and then you can go see the regions that we have opened up. So wherever you are in the world, there will be a Startup World Cup near you. So last year we did Kenya and Nigeria and South Africa, as well as pretty much, every country in Europe and East Asia, et cetera, et cetera. So you should be able to find a Startup World Cup near you. And we have had a number of entrepreneurs who actually they flew in for the Silicon Valley version of it because they were coming to Silicon Valley anyway. So we run the Silicon Valley version regional competition in early August. And we're going to be doing a New York Tech Week competition. And we're going to do a South by Southwest competition in addition to all of the other regional competitions that we're doing.
Nice. And are you going to be at all of them?
No, I can't. I mean, I kind of wish I could be in all of them, but no, I get to go. I get to go to a number of them, and I am sort of honored and delighted to be the chief evangelist for Startup World Cup, and so for that I get to be the ambassador or the MC for a number of the events.
And what kind of startups are you specifically looking for? Not necessarily the sector, right? Because it's pretty agnostic.
Yeah, we are.
But is it early stage?
Yeah.
You got what series? Where are you generally at?
Yeah, well, it's been very interesting how it's evolved over the years. Originally our thought was we put $1 million prize out there, and that will attract, sort of the right cohort of entrepreneurs, because if you've already raised $10 million, you're not going to bother, right? But as we've expanded over the years, and as Startup World Cup has had a bigger and bigger brand, what we've discovered is we're now getting applications from startups that have 10, 20 million in revenue. And so we're a little perplexed now because, for the earlier stage companies, they think it's unfair to compete against a $20 million company. But we get these more mature companies that are applying because they want the visibility that Startup World Cup is now giving. So we put no criteria, no limits on applications. So you can be 2 guys in a garage, or 2 gals in a garage, or a guy and a gal and a dog, or you can be a $25 million, material science company, in
just get in the game
Singapore.
is what you're saying.
Yeah. And so just to get on stage now in any given region gives these entrepreneurs visibility that they're not going to get, any other way, because we've been able to attract the VCs and the media and all the other stakeholders in all of these ecosystems to see you as an entrepreneur and give you the opportunity to connect with people who are in the room.
I love it. David, I want to check in with you. How are we doing on time, buddy?
We are just 15 seconds away from 56 minutes.
All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep going. Right. But I want to thank everybody. Before we go off the air, Bill, how can people connect with you?
So it's hard. I mean, I'm just so overwhelmed. I mean,
How do they get through your security?
That's not,
Tell them to connect with you first. And
probably right. One of the best ways is to show up at Startup World Cup.
Yeah. Go to the website.
But again, I'm accessible through LinkedIn, and I apologize in advance. I'm just not able to get to everyone. But there's, it's not just me. There's the whole Pegasus, team. There's the whole Startup World Cup team. So yes, and then you can always get some of my ideas by buying the book, right?
So Payom, we already gave information on how to contact with you. We're going to keep rolling on the podcast side. For those of you who are listening on the radio, we're going to say goodbye. Bill, I want to thank you for being here. Payom, I want to thank you for being here. David, good job. Play that theme music and we'll roll out of here.
Excellent job, everybody.
All right. And that's a wrap for today. Join us here every Tuesday, and we'll see you here next week. All right, so we're on the podcast side of the show. David, I gotta brush up on my closing skills. I keep forgetting. Brian tells me don't close because he will close for me. But we're here on Apple and Spotify, and we're just wrapping up with Payom and Bill. I feel like I could talk to both of you all day. And Bill, I love your energy. Payom, I love your energy.
Thank you.
But tell us a little bit more about the book. So those who are listening on podcast, on Apple Podcast and Spotify, I want them to be able to get the book. And you're saying it's on
Amazon.com near you. So around the world, it's available on whatever your local chapter of Amazon.com is.
And what would you say is some more insights around the book, so that people could just kind of like, I found it fascinating what you said earlier, is that there's a difference between pitching and presenting.
Right. Yeah. And, what's interesting is we came across a lot of people who were like posting old pitch decks, like the Airbnb pitch deck and the LinkedIn pitch deck and the Uber pitch deck, and, as examples of great pitch decks. And if you look at a lot of the sort of successful companies, their original pitch decks, you realize they got funding in spite of their pitch deck, not because of their pitch deck.
Yeah.
But people think because they were successful, their pitch decks must have been good, right?
Yeah.
And so part of what we did in sort of the core 100 pages in the middle of the book are 100 slides from famous and not so famous pitch decks. And on each slide, what we did is we said, okay, this is what's good about the slide. This is what's bad about the slide. And this is what you want to accomplish with this slide. So that you can look at some of the original Uber slides or LinkedIn slides or Airbnb slides or whatever. And you can realize, boy, just because they did it this way does not mean it's going to work for me. And maybe they could have done it better, right?
Yeah.
So we spend a fair amount of time, sort of showing why it is that not every successful company had a great pitch deck. And so don't get fooled by these websites that are sharing these pitch decks.
The trend on LinkedIn
It's
nowadays.
on LinkedIn everywhere.
It is. And I'm assuming we're going to be able to forever promote that in here for our YouTube audience and post that up. You're gonna.
This is your copy. This is
I
your
love
copy,
it,
Brian.
Thanks, Bill. Payom, I'm curious. What have you discovered has been useful for you or successful for you in your pitching? You talked a lot about go to market, and it doesn't stop, right? The pitching or the presenting doesn't stop with raising money. It really is recruiting top talent. It's sales. It's moving the company forward.
So you're an entrepreneur. Every time you open your mouth, you're pitching.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say it again for those in the back.
Right. No, I mean, if you're introducing yourself to a group of people, you're pitching. If you're you've only got 20 seconds, you're pitching. So entrepreneurs think the pitch is this segregated period of time when somebody puts me on stage and gives me 4 minutes. No. Every time you open your mouth, you are pitching.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is learn lessons again from myself in the hard way. You're pitching all the time because even the people you sell to may be potential investors for you. Okay, like it doesn't matter if they're an investor, not an investor. It doesn't matter. But like, you don't know who you're talking to until you talk to them.
Yeah.
So like I've had situations where one of the guys I was at the gym with, I talked to about my company. He became an investor in my company. Okay, I was just working out with the guy. And this has no relation with, oh, he's the right investor. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. Like, you have to embody the company that you are trying to be passionate about. And they have to look at you and say, he's the guy you go to if you need to get a student to work for you. You go to Payom. Okay. That store is where you go to get that screen that you can touch and play with an iPad, right? So like people will recognize you almost simultaneously with the brand, and you have to become what the brand is to other people as well. So I always tell my salespeople, I tell them, don't pitch, okay? You have to explain it properly. It's already going to be a pitch. Don't force it. You're going to have to just explain it in a way that they'll understand it. Every audience is different. An investor is different than a salesperson is different than an employee. But at the same time, it's all technically a pitch.
Yeah.
Everything.
And when you think of the clear, compelling, and credible, it really boils down to, are you a good communicator?
Exactly.
Is a good communicator the hallmark, the cornerstone of a great founder?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a bad communicator, it's really, really tough, right? And so, fortunately, most successful teams have at least one person who's good at this. Steve Wozniak was not very good at this. Steve Jobs was really good at this, right? And so, they each needed each other to build a successful company. But you've got to have someone on the team who is a really good communicator for every audience.
Do you ever look at a team slide and see 3 or 4 founders who are all engineers and ask yourself, who's the showman or showwoman or the salesperson or the one's going to drive sales? Because this is a great idea, but they just don't have the team.
Well, again, usually we're going to, meet with them somehow, whether it's Zoom or whatever. And so we find out then. Because just because you're an engineer doesn't mean you're a bad communicator.
Right. Yeah, I shouldn't have said it like that's not what I meant, but just true.
Okay.
I'm going to walk it back now.
that was pretty good, Brian.
I know. Now I've got pie on my face. But it may not be the engineer. It may be somebody else, right?
Absolutely.
But
right.
you really kind of unearth that when they pitch and or in your due diligence or your second conversations.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have to have multiple conversations with any given company before we can write a check. And so really good point. Most entrepreneurs don't understand what's going on when we're talking with them. They assume we're looking for facts. Okay, what's your pipeline? What's your technology? What's your patent? What's your burn rate? Whatever. And yeah, we're looking for that. But an equal significant aspect of it is we're testing them as people. We're listening to the way they react to our questions, the way they respond to our questions, the way they work together as a team. When you see, I can't tell you how often and how stunning it is to me that we're in a conversation with a team of entrepreneurs, and one of the founders, basically disrespects another person on the team. And I go, wait a second, what is going on? How can you do that, in public? And certainly they're doing it in private. Yeah. And, that sort of culture is, not guaranteed to fail, but that's just, that boom. I mean, I'm not confident that culture is going to survive.
Yeah, like I just took a shot at all the engineers across Silicon Valley. Yeah, don't come at me. I apologize.
Right.
So, but there's somebody who needs to be on the team who is kind of that conductor, and not only the conductor of the team, but of the market. And depending on their skills, do you drive the category, or are you just, taking a piece of the pie? Because let's talk a little bit, and we'll wrap it up in about 5 minutes here. Let's talk about specifically finding your market and more so go to market. How important is it for a fundable company to be just completely locked in on that market and know it just as much as they know their product or their service?
Yeah, I mean, this was a huge struggle for me when I was an entrepreneur, because the venture capital community requires that you be convinced when you pitch, right? And so when you pitch to the VCs, traditionally, you know who your target customers are, you know how much it's going to cost to convert them, you know what your revenue ramp's going to be, you know what your burn rate's going to be, right? You got to know that, right? And so as an entrepreneur, one of my challenges was, well, wait a second, I don't know everything yet. And so what I realized is that for most startups, there's this sort of period of divergence before there's a period of convergence. And that's not exactly aligned with the way the venture capital system works. And so we as venture capitalists tend to force entrepreneurs to be sort of more definitive and more sure than is appropriate. So we want them to be flexible if they discover, and they're going to discover, bumps in the road. And if they don't have the flexibility to say, oops, maybe this is not exactly the right target market, or this is not exactly the right technical feature, or this is not exactly right. They've got to have that flexibility to be open and honest with themselves and the market to be able to pivot. And so this is, subsequently, this is what sort of Eric Ries is writing about in Lean Startup. But it's still a problem in the venture capital community today that a lot of VCs do not like entrepreneurs to have any doubt. And it's pretty impossible, for most startups to have no doubt. Right?
I think that's key for early stage startups to hear, to give them permission to kind of recalibrate. Payom, tell me a little bit about this diversion. It's almost like a conscious breath, right? This inhale where you go, or inhale, you kind of expand, and then the exhale, and you focus. Probably a poor analogy, but we'll just keep.
Some people just keep inhaling. I just want to say that, and it just explodes at a certain point. I think that what Bill said was very important. It actually coincides with pivoting, and pivoting when you learn what your customer wants. And you have to really listen. You have to listen to what the market wants from you. I feel like even Series A, Series B startups struggle with this. The ones that even I've been a part of, they struggle with the idea of listening to what the market wants from them and then not giving them what they want, just shoving them their technology over and over again. But the real sweet spot's there. You really need to listen. For my startup, we pivoted 4 times. And it wasn't small pivots. Like, it was technological, it was everything. And this last pivot that we did towards jobs was because we were serving the space for deals and discounts for students. And those local businesses came back to us and said to us, we're trying to hire students and we're on page 35 of Indeed. We're trying to hire like very local talent, but I never get the talent. I get 400 applicants and 3 people showed up, and I just paid $1,300 this month for that service. And we were building a map, and we're just like, we're building a map for students for local businesses. So we understood right then and there that what we were building for was this all along.
Yeah.
And we just needed to listen.
Yeah.
And the minute we pivoted, now we have 40,000 jobs on the app.
Nice.
And it's just growing. It's growing at a hyper scale now. So you will know, you just need to know when to let all that air out and come back, right?
Yeah.
And when that happens, beautiful things happen. You're not running for money anymore. People start talking to you about giving you money. Conversations change. I did not grow up with I did not grow up with wealth. I did not grow up with a network. I grew up in the Silicon Valley, so I grew up with the third mindset, which is hustle, and build traction for yourself and build that trust. So when people come to you, you can have at least one of those 3.
Did you just say you didn't grow up in Silicon Valley?
No, I did.
You did? Okay,
I did.
right.
I said I had the Silicon Valley, so what I had to do was I had to hustle, I had to network, and I had to build that. And if you are here, you are blessed. You truly are. This is the heart of startups.
Well, I love that insight. You're so right. And I love what you guys are doing at Pegasus Ventures, because you're building bridges for people who can't necessarily be here or live here, but they get to experience and engage. So I love that what you're doing. I just kind of want to give the mic to you guys one last time, because we're going to sound off on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. But first off, I want to thank you for being here. You're both amazing. Congratulations on all your success. Bill, keep doing what you're doing. You're a legend. You may know it or not know it, but I want to give you that title.
It just makes me sound old. I don't know. That's it.
Did I do it again? Did I say something? I backed myself.
Engineers and legends. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm here for. All right, to remind everybody to put them in their place. All right, but Bill, but thank you so much for being here. You're an amazing individual. You've always been so warm and welcoming, and it's no surprise that the startup ecosystem connects with you, and Pegasus is doing so well. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, no, thank you, Brian, very much. Really appreciate this opportunity to be here with you. And you do great work, and you need to keep up the good work of letting the world know, what's going on here in Silicon Valley and how they can tap into it.
David, if you've done anything today, I hope you got that on you got that recorded, right?
Still recording.
I'm gonna that's gonna be my ringtone right there. Bill Vegas. All right. Payom, one last parting thought.
I would say that it's actually really nice to come full circle here. You have the beginning of your entrepreneurship journey, and then the weathered version of the entrepreneurship journey, and they're very different, right? But it is a journey, and for everyone who's listening, there is going to be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of breathing in and breathing out, and the real entrepreneurs are the steadfast ones. Some of the biggest companies you've seen today did not take 1 year to make. They took 9-10 years of just hard work. And if you have an idea that's truly something special and people want it and they love it and they're waiting for it, build it and then apply to Startup World Cup. So you can get
I love it. All right, we've all played nicely together. All right. Well, again, thank you for both being here. David, thank you for filling in for Brian.
My pleasure.
We can play that theme music one last time. All right. We'll see you all soon. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast under Silicon Valley Impact. I am Brian Sparks, and I will see you all real soon.